Hello, and welcome to session 10 in the Building Better Teams series. We're going to talk about conflict, disagreement, why this should be normalized, why this is actually of huge benefit in a team, in particular in a science team. As I've mentioned before, these are an adaptation of a series we hosted in person and hybrid as part of the IMOD professional development program in early 2025. You can see some of the subjects we covered. I encourage you to visit the other videos and check those out. So, hopefully, you've got a pen and paper present. I encourage you to answer this question. What is conflict in a team environment? Pause the video for 30 seconds, write something down, think about what conflict means to you. Conflict is all about differences, disagreements. It is near impossible to imagine a collaborative venture in which conflict does not occur. In fact, I would argue that if you are in agreement, if you are all in agreement about something, you're either in a space where you've got the wrong people on the team, or you're not going after a challenge that is complicated enough. If it's something that everyone agrees on, then what are you doing investigating it? Um, if everyone's in agreement, then go and find other different points of view. This is of particular significance in a scientific research scenario where folks are looking at like cutting edge discoveries. This is a space where there should be a lot of disagreement, and this is a space where bringing together different perspectives is really going to be the only mechanism to find something new. We talked about this earlier on in the stages of teamwork, but you've really got to go through a storming phase to reach the norming and the performing phase. And that storming phase is where disagreement happens. That's where you start to get constructive criticism and really questioning of ideas and assumptions. So embrace the fact that disagreement is good. It really helps the team gel and form and really find an idea to get behind that is worth chasing down. Take 30 seconds, write some points down here. What are some of the key pillars of the scientific method? What is the scientific method? What are the processes through which we operate in terms of innovation and discovery? This is how I would define it. You ask a question, you conduct some background research. Based on that question and the findings in the field before this, you form a hypothesis. You design and conduct an experiment. You analyze the data, and then you conclude whether or not your question was correct or not. You then communicate that to others. And that's where you get rigorous questioning. If it's part of the process, it could almost be number 7 instead of part of number 6. That communication is both how you communicate this to others, but also how you receive that questioning and that activity. You then repeat, you refine, you reflect, you say, okay, great, maybe I missed something, or this opens a new door, or this gives me a new question to answer or ask. This process of active and rigorous questioning about the observations, hypotheses, and experimental results, I would argue, is the scientific process. The fact that we keep asking questions, the fact that we disagree, is what the cutting edge of the scientific endeavor is all about. So, while in other projects and teams, it might not be front and center, to be on a good scientific research team, you need to be super comfortable with disagreement. You've got to expect people to disagree with you, and you've got to be almost grateful for it. Don't take it personally. This person's engaging, and this person's going to help you learn and find new things. Avoiding a problem isn't solving a problem. I should have put the elephant that I have up in the communication slide deck here. If there's an elephant in the room, talk to it. If you're in a team where you fear conflict and you tend to avoid it, you're not doing yourself any justice. In fact, you're kind of hiding from the places where you might find new things. The most successful team players and leaders adapt their reaction to conflict according to the scenario at hand. So sometimes that conflict is a disagreement, but they can really think about what it is they're looking at. There's no one size that fits all, but there are some mechanisms that you can use for this. If you end up in a situation where you are disagreeing and it's not just something that's kind of a short disagreement, but it kind of goes on for longer, and we'll talk through some of those. Part of this is attitude. Part of this is how you prepare to enter these situations and really taking the attitude that solving an issue is an opportunity is a great way to walk into this such that you learn from it and you don't end up taking it personally. Disagreements often stem from differing perspectives. Digging into these can help you challenge assumptions, can help you think about things that you might not have thought about because you assume it's known or you assume it's fixed, when actually a different perspective can give you a different way in. It can help you develop critical thinking, which improves your problem solving. It builds trust. If you can actively engage in disagreement and both people walk away smiling, then they're going to be stronger and more resilient. The team will be better. Handling this conflict well builds your skills for the future. It builds your communication, it builds your emotional intelligence, your EQ, and it makes you a better negotiator. If you're afraid to engage in disagreement, you are never going to be an effective negotiator. It's not the same as disrespecting. You're not questioning the person, you're questioning ideas. And that's great. That's what the scientific enterprise is all about. Science thrives on disagreement. One of the ways to do this is to really encourage people to do this more often. You can formalize this. You know, one of the key factors to do is to build trust. And actually, disagreement in a constructive fashion is a great way to build trust because people can feel safe. They try it, they've disagreed, but no one's kind of pointed fingers at them. They've actually had a productive and constructive disagreement and they feel safe. They now feel that they can have an open and honest discussion about differences. They can be engaged. It's harder maybe with researchers because they often feel ownership over their idea. It was their hypothesis, it's their project, it's their thing. And if you disagree with it, you're maybe pointing at them and it's a personal attack. So that is both on the person. So if you're the one being disagreed with, understand that that's okay and that's good and have an attitude where you encourage people to do that. But also, if somebody else is feeling attacked, try and take a step back and think about how you can ask the question in a way that really is more constructive and shows that you're focusing on the idea and not the person. How do you make that easier? Um, there's a great tool for this. The Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument is a great way to really understand not only how you approach things, but how others might approach things. Are they competitors? Are they trying to be assertive and try and get one over on everybody else? Always have the last word. Are they accommodating? Do they neglect their own concerns to satisfy others? Do they kind of fold quickly? Do they avoid it? Do they just not say anything? Um, that's pretty bad for folks, especially in the sciences. And so you need to encourage them to really kind of push forward. Are they collaborating? So they're assertive, but they try and find ways in which you can compromise. Or are they compromising where they can be looking to find a mutually acceptable solution? I took this and I found myself somewhere between compromising and accommodating. There isn't one thing that you should be, but recognizing where you are and maybe places where that doesn't work for you. I was maybe too accommodating in some situations and I needed to push a little bit harder on things. Gives you a mechanism to really think about how to act in different situations. There are mechanisms that you can use to get practice on this. You can formalize this as part of your team's expectations. So you can actually say, I would like us to really formalize what this looks like for disagreement. So even in a diverse team, there can be a culture of compliance and groupthink. Trying to create opportunities for disagreement is a great way to kind of push back on this. So there's a set of rules here. Make it a goal. When you're putting together your collaborative agreement, really make a statement that says, I want us to disagree. I want us to go through that storming phase. Set some ground rules. Set the assumption that everybody is there to help. If someone questions you, welcome it. And then you can almost set this up as part of your agenda. So if you've got a question that you want to try and challenge, or you've got something, have a brainstorming phase. No judgment on there's no bad ideas in a brainstorm. Just get things down and then walk through them, clarify, explain, get everyone on the same page. Then have a formalized challenge. Encourage everybody to say, why is that not going to work? What does it look like? Ask questions, even if you're not ready to ask questions. Come at them with questions. They might be easy ones. They might be like, no, that doesn't apply here. Or it might be like, oh, I didn't think about that. This idea of all polishing is done by friction. And then down select. You've gone through this process, but it's a mechanism to formalize, get people used to asking questions, taking questions, and really engaging in that constructive feedback. Um, you know, One of these ideas is that innovation most often occurs at intersections of disciplines. So if you have two disciplinary experts, if they're trying to operate in the middle, that neither of them actually owns it. So neither of them's an expert in that specific area. And that's a great way to say to people, you don't have to feel protective or defensive or questioned on your expertise. We're all in a new space. And so there's no owner, and we're working together to really figure out something new. This then gives you a mechanism to make it easier for people. If there are people who are not good at questioning or being questioned, this is a great way to help them with that and give them a chance to really engage in that in a way that is safe. And it means that you don't question the people or contradict people. That's a great way to have this head-on collision, as they say at the bottom, and it's a mechanism for erosion. This is another mechanism. It's one that can be used in conjunction with the formalized thing, but it's a way to really kind of find common ground. This one shifts from a position statement to an interest statement. And what does that mean? Shift your thinking from what people say they want to the reason that they're asking this. What is their real need versus they're maybe not communicating their needs effectively because they're in a situation where they're just saying what they want. What does that mean? This sounds a bit like a setup to a joke, but you've got 3 graduate students, one in physics, one in chemistry, and an engineer. They're working on an interdisciplinary project, but struggle to communicate because of different terminology and assumptions. The physicist is focused on the fact that the chemists aren't considering the fundamental quantum mechanics. The chemist is saying the engineers don't understand the material properties at a molecular level. The engineer is saying, you're overcomplicating things. We just need to build a prototype. This is their positions. This is where they're standing. This is what they're saying. The needs are different. What are their interests? The physicist wants to make sure the model is correct. The chemist wants the materials to be stable, reproducible, and synthesizable. The engineer needs a practical design that can be built. All of them have common ground. They all want to be successful. They want to make their thing. But, the chemist is saying, look, I can't make that molecule. You've drawn something that is very hard to make, or it's unstable, or it's not going to be something that I can make more than once. The engineer is like, look, I just need to be building something. And the physicist is saying, I just want to be accurate. So talk about where the common ground is, and then start to have things like that shared vocabulary, like the teaching each other. Try and communicate these things, but shifting from what they want and what they need helps you uncover these kind of ideas. This is very similar. Getting to yes, this idea of principled negotiation. You're not talking about the people, you're talking about the problem. So stop pointing fingers by saying, you aren't giving me what I want. Say something like, I need these things, help me understand how we can get there. Focus on the interests, not the position. Often things are easier to fix than you think when you actually get down to what people really need. Think about what the shared goal is, as we talked about before, and then talking away from the personal preferences. Really, how do we do this? How do we base these decisions on data and precedents? However much you try and set up a team communication mechanism to have good disagreement and good conflict and constructive space, you will find yourself in situations where your emotions raise, where you feel that adrenaline spike. Try and recognize that. Try and help be one of the take the high road and help with de-escalation, even if you think that you're in the right and they're in the wrong. Recognize things that are happening. If you find rising tension, take a pause. Nothing we're doing is life and death. And so if it really is still rising, suggest a break. Say, this is clearly an important conversation. Let's pick this up in a week's time. Give people a chance to reflect, to pause. Try and stay calm, sometimes hard. Kind of what we talked about before. Avoid pointing the finger. So don't say, you always ignore my ideas. Say, I feel like my ideas aren't being fully considered. How do we address that? You're not saying it's anyone's fault. You're basically saying, let's address the problem. Slow things down. Try and recognize other folks' perspectives. Often in these kind of situations, it can be very disarming to say, okay, I hear you. That sounds like a problem. How do we fix the problem? Acknowledging their concerns can help diffuse the frustration. Shift from blame to saying, how do we focus on solving the problem together? Ask open-ended questions. You know, focus on what are the challenges versus why do you do this? Talk to people, maintain eye contact, make sure that you are paraphrasing them back. You're using the active listening. Try and find points of agreement, however small. That can help with things. If this is still going on, suggest a structured format where each person gets their time. So if you are talking over each other, say, okay, let's stop for a second. Bill, you go first. Talk through everything. Tell us where you're at. Jenny, you'll follow up after that. And then you kind of say, okay, where's our common ground? Where's our solution? If you are still in a conflict, bring in a mediator, bring in a third person. This can be someone on your team who is appointed to this. This can be someone in a community. It can be someone who's more objective. Hopefully, it hasn't kind of reached a point where the interpersonal relationship is damaged, but it can often happen. But try and address it before it gets to that. If there is still this scientific disagreement, hopefully you're still smiling and talking to each other separately. That's when it can be a really fascinating discussion to bring in another team member or someone outside the team to be like, we can't agree on this. We're still friendly, we're still getting on, but how do we address this scientific thing? Because we're talking about the subject, we're not talking about the people. Here are the action items. There's some pointers on how to sort of address things, especially if you do end up in a conflict that isn't easy to address. Next up, and in the final one of this course, is the leadership versus teamship versus followership. Hope to see you there. Thank you.